Hello everyone. At the end of my last video, I said that I would be making a video about Nezziemonster and their actions towards me. This is that video, but the situation after my last video's release developed extremely dramatically and has changed how I'll be going about things here. Though we will still be talking a lot about Nezzie, this video will have a much stronger focus on someone by the name of Avi Haltmann towards the end. His real name is Avraham Blumenfeld, and he is my abusive ex-boyfriend who preyed on me when I was a child, and covered this up by accusing me of being abusive behind the scenes to anyone who would listen to that claim. I have known of this claim about me since November of last year when Lyle Convoy told me, which led to me handing over my complete DM logs between me and Avi to him. Recently, Lyle, with my permission, was able to get a couple of mods from the Cat Slayer, specifically Ephraim and Hidden, to sift through my DMs with Avi, and all concluded that Avi was not only incredibly inappropriate with me when I was underage, but also emotionally abusive throughout the course of our time knowing each other. Initially, I wasn't going to talk about the private abuse claim from Avi and was simply going to talk about the inappropriate nature of our relationship, but since everything exploded when Avi was confronted by Lyle on March 2nd of this year, I feel the need to go much more into detail. If at all possible, please watch through the entire video, as the parts where I go over what happened between me and Avi and the way things were handled in private between him and Nezzie are truly sickening and something I really hope people will see. With that, into the actual video. Hello, Nezzie's therapist. If you're here watching this like Nezzie said you would be, first of all, I'm sorry. I don't think this was in your job description, and I really hope this is during a session, or else you're counting the time you spend watching this video as one so you can at least get paid by insurance. Otherwise, I don't think it's fair to be making you sit through all this. And secondly, girl, strap in, you better find out some wild shit. Hello, everyone. Why am I here again? Well, since my video about Heaton, a lot has happened and has continued to happen after the follow-up stream I did a month later, including someone only briefly mentioned in my original video having the biggest crash out of everyone mentioned, so bad that it implicated me in a love triangle I didn't know even existed, with them doing so in both private and public, despite, again, originally only being the focus for literally 60 seconds. That person, of course, being Nezziemonster. Today we'll be primarily talking about them and their now, as of recent, ex-boyfriend, Avi Haltmann. And though Nezzie and Avi will be the predominant focus, we will also be talking about some of the other people from the SCC/adjacent. Consider this an official follow-up to my Heaton video, and as such, I highly recommend that you watch that video if you haven't already. And for those who have watched that video, I would like to make it clear that several of the non-creators mentioned did reach out to me to apologize, as well as both Musha, Manga Common, and even Dalsmic Bummer Patrol. I'll go ahead and give them their flowers for that. Except Dahl. His W will be fucking off forever and never returning to his platform again. You might be wondering what exactly I even have to say about Nezzie at this point, since if you watched the follow-up stream I did in October, you might have thought that I talked about everything there is to talk about in regards to Nezzie's actions. And in fairness, Nezzie hadn't done anything super recent publicly prior to my video on them being announced. But dear God, is there a lot the public doesn't know about. That on top of the myriad of other things they've done, which includes but is not limited to calling a grooming victim a liar publicly as a means to cover their own ass for why they were so lax on calling out that groomer and general sex pest, telling an abuse, grooming, and child sexual abuse victim, me, to stay mad about everything that happened to them, having the audacity to say the things they did about me in public while never apologizing when called out, instead opting to block and or retaliate against anyone who calls them out, even if it means outing personal details about someone else's life, mine, for no reason other than to score a low dig, deleting their tweets and Twitter as if nothing happened and running away to Blue Sky where they still crashed out on a regular basis, and more. I should also point out that Avi was supportive of these actions and has even taken responsibility for blocking some of the aforementioned on Nezzie's account. With that, I feel more than justified making a video documenting Nezzie's actions so that they can be known comprehensively, much like I did with Heaton. Also, as far as I was concerned before the events of March 2nd, Nezzie and Avi had more than enough time to retract or apologize for these words, and yet the only things they had done is remove tweets from Nezzie's account without saying anything, as well as Nezzie seemingly subtweeting responses to points brought up in my follow-up stream I did. I now have a better understanding on why Nezzie was so apprehensive to apologize for their words or even believe that they were wrong, but we'll get into that much later. Also, the other dipshits I want to talk about poked the bear, me, before trying to run away to Blue Sky, as so many of the shit stains I've dealt with on Twitter seem to have done. So, you know what I call that? Fair game. So, a quick introduction for anyone who might be unaware. Who the fuck is Nezzie? Well, Nezzie is an apparent former member of the SCC, slideshow commentary community, dumbass fucking name, I know. The main community I talked about in my Heaton video, and former home to several people you may have heard of like Susie Doodletones, V Omega, Musha, Heaton Mitsuru, Yoon, Avi Haltmann, etc. They found their prominence in 2019 and pretty quickly made connections in both the SCC and older group of art commentators like Hopeless Peaches, Miss ZZ, Toby Majestic, etc. These are just incredibly cursed lineups. Recently, however, Nezzie has found themselves in hot water for coming up on 2 years now, specifically over the exposure of an old Discord group from 2019 to 2020 that involved all of the aforementioned art commentators as well as doodletones called the Fruitcakeklub. Let's just get into it. Okay, so admittedly I will not be detailing the entire saga of this server's existence as it's not relevant to this video, but I do believe the information about what went down on there and who did what is extremely important. Thankfully, one of my best friends and fellow content creators, Thuman, is making an extensive video cataloging exactly what happened and what its members have done with the actions coming to light. I highly recommend you watch it. I'll have a card appear here in the video for everyone to go check out when it comes out. Girl, lock in! There's also Lyo's video on a call he had with Nezzie about this whole thing, and some mentions of me because it was right after Avi was confronted. Do recommend giving that a watch. TLDR, the Fruitcakeklub, called the FCK for the sake of brevity, was a server that had a lot of adult content in it, full of the old art commentator sphere and adjacent from 2019 to 2020. That included, but was not limited to, Doodletones, The Names Junkie, Lucifix, Mad Libs, Hopeless Peaches, Miss ZZ, Fuchsia Butters, Toby Majestic, Toasty Vanilla, and Nezziemonster, as well as a bunch of fucking children! The youngest of whom was 12! Several of these children were children with online platforms like Slimmers, Mimi Diggs, It's Jamesy, and the most outspoken member, Teddy That Draws. These children were regularly subjected to, encouraged to share, and even create pornographic artwork, though real-life pornographic images were also shared by adults. There was also a chat dedicated to porn that Slimmers, a child, drew with others in the server interacting in there. I want to be clear, not every member was equally culpable or even participated in things as much as others. As far as I'm aware, ZZ, Fuchsia, Peaches, Toby, and especially Toasty, who groomed Teddy, were the worst offenders, while others served more as enablers, like Junkie, Lucifix, though apparently he was the fucking admin, and Nezzie, who knew about the minors' porn chat. Now, if you told Nezzie that they were an enabler, they would vehemently deny that and say, "What do you mean enable? I called Toasty out multiple times about their inappropriate behavior with minors, and I got rid of the Slimmers NSFW chat." And I know that because that's how they responded to me calling them out for that. So, about that, Nezzie shared screenshots of their DMs with Toasty with their old friend group, including Doodletones, who posted those screenshots publicly to prove basically the same point that Nezzie was trying to. And to this day, I have no idea how the fuck Nezzie thought those screenshots were going to make them look good in any fashion. I've been told that when Nezzie did share these screenshots, they were sent with a story of what Nezzie was apparently trying to accomplish, which clouded the views of people like Susie. However, when they were released to the public and viewed critically from people outside of Nezzie's friend group, people saw that these DMs told a completely different story than the one Nezzie and co were trying to feed everyone. Firstly, the calling out of Toasty in the DMs mostly had to do with their treatment of Mad Libs, though they do bring up Toasty's treatment of Teddy to a much lesser extent. And in this conversation, Toasty admits not once, but twice, that they have sent porn to Teddy and even discussed tolerance levels when it came to NSFW. However, Nezzie puts way more effort into grilling Toasty on their treatment of Mad Libs than they ever do regarding Toasty's actions towards a literal child, despite correctly comparing Toasty's behavior to V Omega, a known child predator, and even calling what Toasty is doing grooming-esque behaviors. Instead, Nezzie simply uses V as a cautionary tale of sorts and tells Toasty they don't want to see them go down the same road, to which I just have to say, if one of your friends is able to go down like V Omega, they need to? Now for the removal of the Slimmers NSFW chat, it reads as follows.
Toasty, you need to remove Slimmers NSFW chat.
I'm not in charge of that. You'll have to ask the admin.
You're friends with the admin.
I wouldn't really call me and him friends, but sure, I'll ask him.
Just warning you guys that could become an issue.
And then after a period of 12 hours...
Hey, Nezzie, tomorrow can you go over my OBS with me and make sure I got everything good?
Sure.
I really shouldn't have to point out how poorly this reads, but let's discuss anyways. So firstly, just warning you guys that could become an issue. Nezzie, was it not already an issue? Was the fact that a child had their own designated porn channel in a server full of adults and other minors not already make it an issue? I guess not. I guess the only way it could become an issue is if the public found out. I don't know about you guys, but if a friend of mine helped set up a porn chat for a child, they would be under the jail, first of all. But I would not be agreeing to help them with OBS software half a day later. Not a single part of this reads as Nezzie actually trying to get Toasty to face some kind of accountability. This feels like you trying to cover for Toasty and give them an out on things that they definitely should have been punished for. So, as you can tell, I already did not have a high perception of those DMs with Toasty that Nezzie shared, and was inclined to believe that they were more so covering for Toasty than doing any calling out that would have led to Toasty facing consequences. And I was inclined to believe that because of their own involvement in the server. However, there was no real way to prove that or anything that could be seen as reasonable confirmation until I found shit they said like a month later about the whole thing. So last year, I went back and found some messages in Ponder's old server of when a creator at the time by the name of Rin, known here by a different name, made a video calling out Toasty Vanilla for their actions, including accusing them of grooming as well as encouraging minors to engage with NSFW, both of which were true. Unfortunately, apparently the evidence was not readily available at the time, or sourced from Akumu, and so the video was poorly received, including by prominent members of the FCK like Junkie, who bashed it as slander. It's such fucking bullshit, but also totally expected from the community that evidence was primarily viewed from biased and self-serving standpoints. There was also our apparent favorite act of tone policing at play when it came to bashing Rin's video, because how dare Rin be angry and mean when talking about people in a space who are actively harming children. Something in these messages that I find annoying and very typical of Nezzie is that they were upset that Toby was being criticized in the same video that called Toasty a groomer, which is really funny considering that Toby was a big participant in the inappropriate nature of that server. But the big thing I want to highlight here is that the creator here, Eternal Storyteller, asked Nezzie to confirm or deny if Toasty was sending sexually inappropriate content to minors or encouraging them to look at it. And Nezzie, the good faith, well-intentioned, honest member of the FCK, the one who called Toasty out, said they had no idea on whether or not Toasty did that and that the friend group where they spammed porn was entirely made up of adults. Real quick, I've seen some people take this to mean that Ponder knew what was going on and was in on the lies, which makes no fucking sense to me and is not true. Why people act and assume that Ponder knew everything and actively allowed Nezzie to lie, I don't fucking know. Ponder wasn't even in the FCK server? Bitches have a vendetta, or else are severely uninformed. Anyways, I decided to do what I felt was best and took the messages I found in that chat and gave them to people that I had contact with who were talking about the FCK. I gave them to Thuman and Lakamokalaka, who in turn gave them to Akumu, who then publicized the messages. Nezzie is weirdly quiet about the whole thing publicly, though went into Ponder's DMs when it was publicized to ask how those messages made it out to the public. The one time they did respond publicly was fucking awful, where they refused to leave their platform before getting ass blasted into the sun by Akumu when he pointed out how full of shit they were, using the screenshots from Ponder's old server, to which Nezzie responded with, and I quote, "Oh my god, I was 19, boo-hoo." I should not have to point out how absolutely disgusting, infuriating, and horrendous this response is to someone pointing out the part you played in covering up children being harmed. But why should I be surprised? This is the same bitch who, when confronted on why they were so lax about Toasty in their DMs with them, said that they were hesitant about going in on Toasty and doing anything about the grooming claim because their victim, Teddy, is a liar. Are you fucking kidding me? Let me get this straight. Teddy could be the biggest liar in the world, and it still wouldn't make you calling them one in this context any better, because Toasty told you that they were fucking around with Teddy! You don't get to feign ignorance when you had direct confirmation from the accused party that they had conversations with Teddy about sending her NSFW and discussing her tolerance levels. You knew what this was! You compared his behavior to V Omega! Fuck this fucking garbage, Nezzie. You knew what was happening, and you helped cover it up. Whether intentionally or no, you did enable a groomer and helped hide evidence of children in an adult space. And I think you're really leaning on the fact that there's no way we can definitively prove that you intentionally lied in Ponder's old server when asked if you knew to sour that read. But too bad. I don't buy the alternative. I don't buy that someone magically forgets about the slew of children being victimized and conditioned by something that was certainly harming them and going to put them in even bigger harm's way. And being able to forget that is not the more innocent alternative that you think it is. It's disturbing. Like, how much does children in front of you being in danger matter to you that you could forget so easily? Someone from the chat of my live stream actually posted what I think is a very concise counter to all of Nezzie's nonsense that they've been pretending makes them look better. Like, if you knew Slimmers was a minor and they had an NSFW chat for them, then lied about you knowing about it, you're not calling them out. You're covering for them. I agree with the statement 1,000,000,000%, and I stand by what I said your actions were in my video on Heaton. Should I have clarified that I could not prove you intentionally lied? Yes, but I believe that you did, and that all of these memory excuses are bullshit, for lack of a better word. Like what? You could remember that Toasty did things you didn't agree with and that they mistreated a friend and that you warned them about sending porn, but you can't remember that he groomed a child and sent that porn to minors? Be fucking for real. And now that we're done with that, it's time to talk about what I mentioned at the end of my last video. The time when Nezzie buddied up with someone who abused me as a child. Knowing that. So for this section, I need to give a little context. If you've been around this channel before or seen my previous video about Heaton, then you will know that I was abused, gaslit, and threatened while I was a minor for years by a former content creator and my friend at the time named Faghost, whose real name is Liam Curry. I highly recommend you watch those videos if you haven't, but for those just getting here, I'll just quickly replay my TLDR from the previous video. Starting in 2019, when I was 16 years old, and for 2 years after, I was emotionally abused, gaslit, threatened, and emotionally blackmailed through suicide by a former YouTuber and my friend at the time, Faghost, also known by their real name Liam or by their current aliases Billy and Jelly Skelly. Faghost made me and 2 others by the names of Clownteeth and Pondersprocket believe that we helped get a mentally ill sexual assault victim arrested who would later kill herself in police custody. We did not know that she was a victim of sexual assault at the time we were trying to get her arrested, nor the extent of her apparent mental health issues. During that time, we antagonized her for the hurt she was causing and lies she was spreading about our friend. Of course, only for us to be told by Faghost themselves that one of those lies, that being that she and another girl who also committed suicide were sexually assaulted by Faghost at a house party, was true. After this period, Faghost regularly displayed suicidal ideations and would even threaten to kill themselves, as shown in my original video. They also decided to check in with me regularly in private to make sure I wasn't telling anyone about the story. Being made to believe I had a hand in one person's suicide, I did not want to do anything that would upset them until over a year later in 2021 when I was freshly 18, when the memories of the story I was told made me so uneasy that I confided in Clownteeth about my feelings and how uncomfortable I was knowing what I knew about Faghost and how they continued to act. When they found out about this and confronting me did not go well, they relentlessly hounded Kylie for a month about my suspicions, made me out to be the villain, said that I was talking shit about her, and even tried to pit Ponder against me, saying that I might be plotting something. Wait for it. After finally leaving me and Clown alone after she essentially begged for them to calm down about me, I once again kept quiet until November, when I told another YouTuber that I was close friends with at the time what was happening. Everyone cut Faghost off, and on December 5th, 2021, I posted my video, Faghost Needs to Leave. 2 days after the upload of my video, Faghost uploaded their own video proving that the story they told us about the assault, the one that they harassed me and my friend over and tried to pit my friend against me for believing, was a lie. The girl that we had antagonized and helped get arrested was a Faghost sock puppet account, as was the Twitter account that tried exposing them. When I found this out, I was possibly more angry in my life than I ever had been. I had posted a comment on Faghost's video telling them that I wanted their social media presence entirely removed, which included deleting their Twitter and YouTube. Faghost started leaving old DM groups that we shared, which I continued to kick them out of and posted about, and I celebrated when they deleted their socials. The video continues to explain how when I came forward about this information information and blew up after finding out I was lied to for so long for no reason. I was victim shamed to hell and back by my former communities, primarily the SCC, and primarily within the SCC by a commentator named Hiiten Mitsuru. Because of how much people who used to know me turned against me and no one had a problem with the disgusting things said about me, I really feel like I lost my voice from the tail end of 2021 all the way until the summer of 2023. It wasn't until that summer that I gained a little courage to speak up due to an incident involving just a robot victim shaming me and the other two for why it took so long to come forward about Liam that prompted YouTuber Lio Convoy to get into separate calls with the victims to get a better understanding of the whole situation. I am well aware that Lio is a controversial figure, but I cannot deny that he has, since his involvement in my situations began, been extremely supportive and helpful in elevating my voice and what happened to me. If it weren't for his actions in both public and private making it clear that the way I was treated by both Liam and the community at large was wrong, I don't think I would have been able to find my voice and gumption as quickly as I did. Lio himself had actually been dealing with Faghost because of them giving him the infamous Spoctor call where Spoctor admitted to having CP on a hard drive past his 18th birthday, and when reaching out to me and the others to get the full story of Liam's actions became incredibly more hostile to them, cutting communication with them. Of course, because they're Liam, they reached out again, were shut down while being called a freak and cut off again, only to then reach out again and ask for a call in the now defunct Senate server to plead their case and explain why they totally aren't a freak. This ultimately resulted in the Faghost Senate call that happened in December of 2023, and that leads us to what this section is about. As in the call, Lio confronted Liam about reaching out to my friend and another one of the victims, Ponder, via an email apology when none of us wanted Liam to reach out to us at all. Liam's response to this when interrogated by Lio is that they were told to send the email, to which Lio said that he knew who Liam was talking about and that that was a lie. Unfortunately, as someone else who knows who Liam was talking about, I regret to inform everyone that that statement is true, and the person in question was Nezzie. In 2022, Nezzie went out of their way to reach out to Liam via email and from there got back in touch with them on Discord, where they then became friends. Nezzie not only toyed with them on the idea of coming back to their platform, the one they used to lie to me about sexual assault and suicide while I was a minor and just generally abused me for years, but also directly encouraged Liam to reach out to us, even at some point referring to us, their victims, as friends. So yeah, Liam was actually telling the truth there. How the fuck did you manage to make me have to confirm that the biggest liar I have ever known and probably ever will know was telling the truth? Well, the answer is that you're a giant liar too and actually fucked up so bad that you ended up giving Liam a plausible out for an action they knew was wrong. They knew we didn't want to talk to them or hear anything from them. They even fucking voiced this to you and you contested it. And even when you pushed them to send the one email, you then encouraged them to reach out to me and Clown Teeth as well, when if you actually had stepped back and bothered to talk to either of us about if we even wanted that, we would have told you immediately that we did not want to hear from Liam. Now you might be wondering how I even know about this and have these screenshots, and the answer is actually quite simple. Nezzie told us and gave them to us. So back in mid-2023, Ponder, Clown, and I were working on our Faghost video, as I mentioned in my last video. That video is high-key in limbo, and I don't know what the fuck is going on with it right now, but that's not important. One pattern of behavior we were, or are, again, I don't know, going to go over when it comes to Liam was how they tried to manipulate things behind the scenes constantly. Liam in particular was very focused on trying to pit people against me before everything came out, and would continue to do so after the fact for years. I discussed this lightly in my original videos about Liam, but during the time of 2023, when the three of us finally looked back on things together, we ended up finding a lot more. So wondering how far this pattern went, Ponder tagged everyone in her old server to ask if Liam had ever reached out to any of the people in there during or after the expose and tried to manipulate the situation like they had a pattern of doing. This is when Nezzie reached out to Ponder in DMs and admitted to having befriended Liam long after them getting exposed and continued to be friends with them for over a year. Nezzie never once reached out to us during the duration of this friendship with Liam to ask what we wanted or how we felt about them being in contact with them. What preceded was a recorded call between the three of us and Nezzie wherein we tried to get the absolute most info out of them that we could regarding this situation. One major thing is that Nezzie admitted very early on to never having even watched my videos on the situation before deciding to reach out because they couldn't handle it because of their anxiety and just asked for a rundown from some friends, but also apparently were just fine to reach out to the abuser in the whole situation.
So you hadn't seen the video yet, but you reached out because you saw that they were like pulling away from groups and whatnot.
I was aware of the whole situation through like a TLDR. I did not watch the video because I did not feel comfortable watching it because of my own anxiety.
Okay.
I kind of avoided a lot of different commentary videos around that time because of certain drama made my heart rate really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Nezzie, they reached out to several people within the SEC to ask for advice when it came to him being in contact with Liam, meaning several people knew Nezzie was in contact with Faghost. The list given includes Kayden Monroe, Avi Haltmann, Susie Doodletones, Ellie Welly Woo, formerly Ellie Momelli, Maybe Heaton. Both of you better fucking pray that that maybe is a no, because I swear to God, if Miss Wildly Irresponsible knew that you were talking to Faghost after chewing out everyone in the Cloak and Dagger situation, there will be fire. Oh, and also Lio.
And just to reconfirm, can you relist the people who you think were aware, or were aware that you were in contact with Faghost?
Kayden, Avi, Susie, Ellie, maybe Heaton, Lio, definitely.
Okay.
Lio, according to what I've talked with him about the situation, found out much later than everyone else and is the only one who really scolded Nezzie for ever reaching out to Liam and condemned how gross it was for them to ever do so. Though Ellie also discouraged it and was apparently the one who convinced Nezzie to cut contact with Liam. And actually, speaking of the Cloak and Dagger situation, Nezzie apparently had the self-awareness that their actions may be treading closely to what they and everyone else had just got done railing people like Tippy and Dalsmic for doing, and when bringing this to Susie's attention, Susie apparently told Nezzie not to worry because they're, quote, not the same.
And then I contacted Susie at one point because I was worried that the Key and Tippy situation was similar to this. And she said no, because there was a lot of different context to the relationship of what was going on.
All right.
This was later confirmed with screenshots from their DMs showing that because Liam didn't groom a child, Susie didn't consider them to be an active danger to the community. And I'm just going to preface this with the fact that Susie has since apologized for what she said about this and admitted to being misinformed. And while I personally don't want to hold any ill will towards her, it still miffs me that Susie didn't think once to redirect Nezzie to maybe ask the actual victims of Liam. Just saying right now, as the person who was the youngest and most vulnerable victim of Liam, since, again, none of you bothered to ask, they're basically the same in my eyes. Vigil stayed friends with a predator while sharing spaces with his victims. You went out of your way to get back in contact with and befriend an abuser, which included lying to a minor about being a sexually violent deviant while you were sharing spaces with their victims. Fuck, you encouraged and are seemingly the biggest reason why they went through with contacting us when we did not want that, and even toyed with the idea with them about coming back to their platform. In a few ways, I would say you're worse than Vigil. Also, if the situation is how Nezzie described it, which is anyone's guess because goddamn if Nezzie doesn't put the bitch in habitual liar, then it sounds to me like no one told Nezzie that they should actually, talk to the victims they had a line of communication with and ask what they actually wanted out of the situation and how they felt about their friend or acquaintance bumping elbows with their literal abuser. It really makes me think because, again, Nezzie didn't tell any of us about this until Ponder alerted her old server asking if Liam had ever reached out so we could talk about that pattern of behavior in our video. And I just wonder that if that never happened, would we have ever known? Or would Nezzie have kept that from us for way longer, like the others kept quiet about knowing Vigil was talking to V Omega? Come to think of it, Nezzie also lied about their knowledge of the FCK server and the minors in it being sent porn and being encouraged to make and post their own. It wasn't until Akumu talked to them while having access to the chat talking about it publicly that they admitted they knew about Slimmers having their own NSFW chat despite being a minor.
And I have questions specifically because you've seen it, and you were in an interaction when they were sending porn, and the only thing that you sent was a little holy water meme. You didn't say anything about the fact that, well, Teddy at the time was like 16 or 17, Slimmers was 15 at the time, and then James was like 16. And those weren't the only minors in that Discord. but those are the 3 I can confirm at the time. And there was like just a fuck ton of porn sent in the server. Madlib sent porn, Lucy sent porn, Toasty sent a lot of porn. He sent the most of it. What is with the porn spamming?
I don't know. He would do that in our conversations too.
Well, he wasn't the only one that did
It was
it.
just kind of.
I know.
It was just kind of the environment that Toasty built. I do
Yeah,
remember
and there was
that.
NSFW specific chats. I don't like the fact that he had an NSFW chat specifically for Slimmers for her art.
Well, yeah. But the NSFW,
Which is one of the reasons why I left.
Led out of the NSFW chats.
I seriously wonder if there's any correlation in the behavior displayed here, or if I'm looking too far into things and recognizing patterns where there aren't any. I don't know, it seems possible, especially since Nezzie believed they're a victim in this situation for some goddamn reason. Yeah, not only did Nezzie crash out in Heaton's server about Liam and how they're so sick of being lied to and all that nonsense, but tried to do the same song and dance during the call to the victims of the abuser they were bumping elbows with. And it was just as awkward as you would imagine.
I really want to yell at her. I want to so bad.
What at Faghost?
Yeah.
Who? Oh.
This is like the 5th time I've been lied to by someone. And I can't. I want to scream.
Okay.
No, Nezzie. In the words of your now ex-buddy Heaton in a situation where they actually apply now, you don't get to play the weeping, tragic victim. You went out of your way to befriend someone who hurt people you knew. You chose the abuser over your friend and 2 other acquaintances who did nothing to harm you. You're not a victim except of your own stupidity, and no one here is going to let you play that role, especially me. You don't get to pretend that you just didn't know about what they did and say that Liam lied to you when the only reason you didn't know is because you didn't care to know. You didn't do your due diligence and felt more empathy and compassion for the perpetrator of harm than you did the victims of it. And that's why we're here. You're not a victim of Liam. You're just a robot reaching out to Cinny Bear, not knowing what the fuck he's talking about and eating up everything Cinny says. To answer another question I'm sure you guys are asking, that being why it's taken this long for me to talk about this even though I've known since late 2023. Firstly, when this did happen, I still really hadn't found my voice yet, as this was just after I talked with Lyle for the first time and still a while before the Faghost Senate call. I was just coming out of a period of over 1.5 years where I had been gaslit into feeling bad about being angry at someone who hurt me like Liam did. And it wouldn't even be until October of 2023 that I even felt okay calling people out again. And at that point, it was specifically Liam that I was calling out. And granted, I did get much louder after that point and am currently in a state where I will ether anyone with no regard because I truly do not care anymore. Secondly, I was worried that if I did give Nezzie the verbal beatdown that they deserved, they would clam up about the situation and or be less willing to give over the screenshots and information that they had. And after seeing how Nezzie had been treating me after I did put the heat on them last year, which had been to block, badmouth, and out personal shit about me, largely because of false information about me that their boyfriend at the time had been feeding them, but that's besides the point, I think I made the right call here. I believe that even if you believe someone has done wrong or been a bad person, if you've done something legitimately condemnable to them, you should still apologize. And thirdly, this was when I still had faith in some of these people and I really wanted to believe that Nezzie was sincere about their remorse, despite how angry that call made me feel. But again, after how Nezzie had treated me last year, fuck that. The switch up was insane. In that call, they were so pathetic and remorseful, even telling me, you can yell at me if you want, which, yeah, we'll get into how long that lasted. You can yell at me if you want. Whatever happened to that, Nezzie, you fake fuck. I'm so tired of bitches feigning self-awareness and remorse, just to turn around and get all pissy when they're still catching smoke from me. Liam did it, Nezzie and Avi have done it, Kayden has done it. Yeah, remember that guy who sexually harassed me when I was a minor? Who educated me about BDSM when I was 15 and spammed gifts of sex toys when I was underage? Well, apparently me talking about that is me leading a harassment campaign against him. Yeah, way to go, Kayden. And you too, Blaze. You know what? Let's talk about it. Blaze the weirdo, fitting fucking name, who I'll be calling Blaze is Kayden's current girlfriend and has been such since long before the time these incidents were happening. And since the start of when Kayden was confronted about these past actions back in May last year, bordered ever closer and closer to straight up apologia for him before just fully committing. She's been subtweeting me and others talking about Kayden since everything became public, telling about how I better watch my mouth about her creep of a boyfriend to not set off her temper and saying, "We're playing stupid games now?" Bet. When I talked more about her boyfriend's actions on my follow-up stream. Of course, only for this bad bitch energy to completely evaporate along with her tweets once I clapped back as they both ran away to blue sky. What the fuck's good, Blaze? If you're gonna take this route, stand on business with your weirdo boyfriend and show everyone what freaks you are, or shut the fuck up. For a quick refresher, since I kind of just barreled full steam ahead into this topic, Kayden Monroe is a creator that I talked about in my video on Heaton when I was detailing a list of experiences I had being sexualized, groomed, and or sexually harassed by adult men in my online spheres when I was a minor. I'll go ahead and play the clip of what exactly I said about Kayden specifically. And on that day, I even got into a conversation with him about sexual preferences and innocently remarked how all of my friends in the SCC had a specific preference, except for one man that I knew. That man being Kayden, who is known online as Kayden Monroe, and he was 27 at the time. You might notice that it's a little weird that a 15-year-old would know the sexual preferences of a 27-year-old man, and that's because it is, and bad stuff was indeed happening behind the scenes. Look, I'm just gonna lay it straight. When I was 14, 15, I was essentially groomed by several adult men in the SCC/adjacent into entertaining their sexualities, which we can see happening in my DMs with V Omega, where I was basically taught that being sent porn and having sexual conversations with adult men was normal. I'm not saying it was a coordinated effort necessarily, but it was more than one man. It was several men, and I entertained them when I was 15 as I was taught to. That is until I was about halfway through 16 and I stopped and started pushing back. Now, I haven't been friends with Kayden or been close to him in any regard for a while now, and for a long time I just had vague negative feelings about him with no true understanding of why. And that little mention of him in V's DMs was my only breadcrumb, but nothing beyond that. That is until I searched through my DMs with a friend who I vented to a lot back in the day, and I found instances back in 2019 when I detailed a list of times I was sexually harassed by Kayden, wherein the gist is basically that he would push sexual boundaries, often under the guise of comedy, either by comments directly crudely sexualizing me, or by posting and saying very inappropriate, often explicit things in front of me. One of these instances happened publicly on a friend's live stream, who I don't blame because they were extremely high at the time and were barely listening. I have the audio from that incident, but I don't want to post it because I would be so uncomfortable with that being public because it's so humiliating and demoralizing. But just know that in every instance, I would ask him, beg him to stop, and to him it meant keep going and try to justify why it was okay for him to do that. And the one time he did stop is because another adult witnessing what was happening shut it down very sternly. But that didn't stop him from repeating the incident again when they weren't around. Now, evidently, I knew how to stand up for myself in the moment, but I didn't know how to ask for support or coordinate a confrontation at the time. When I basically rediscovered all of these locked memories in the middle of writing this script, I had a really bad few weeks, to say the least, and it's a big reason why this video is coming out as late as it is. I told my friends what happened, including the one who shut Kayden down initially, and they helped me set up a confrontation with him. In that call, I even played the audio to him of when he did harass me on the stream, and he did profusely apologize for what he had done. And he did do what I asked of him, which was to take a break from his platform for a couple of weeks while he reflected on the knowledge of his actions. He knows that I'm talking about this publicly, and I expect him to address it publicly in his own words as well. Originally, I was gonna say something here about how I'm not personally coming forward with this information because I want to destroy Kayden's career and whatever he's doing online. But I realize it shouldn't matter. I should be able to come forward about this for whatever reason I want. I don't want what happened to me as a minor in these communities to be a dirty little secret. And just like with Faghost, I don't think it's fair to make a victim cater to the person who victimized them just because the victimizer is afraid of consequences. In my follow-up stream, I had read out this apology and then stated that there were things I had heard from Kayden that made me disbelieve the authenticity of it, but I didn't go into detail on exactly why, as I wasn't entirely sure whether I had permission to speak on what I heard about. I have since, however, received such permission and now have no reservations on whether or not I should. So the day the video came out, there was a call in an SCC resolution server or something involving Kayden and Blaze. It was mainly to clear up what exactly was said in my video and get everyone on the same page, since that video was apparently a fucking nuke to the community. Anyways, the contents of this call are what led me to believe that this apology from Kayden was full of shit, because the public-facing reaction when being confronted with his actions versus how he talks and acts about what I said were two completely different things. For instance, the part of my video where I talked about Kayden was played in the call. His literal first words to hearing me say that I would not post a clip were "fuck you," followed by him and Blaze shitting their asses over how I was making him look worse by not posting the clip. I have the audio from that incident, but I don't want to post it because I would be so uncomfortable with that being public because it's so humiliating.
Fuck you.
Excuse me?
What was it?
I saw the footage. They shared it with me. The context was clear. And they removed it and are making me look worse.
Yeah, for some reason, they both felt really entitled to having the video clip of Kayden sexually harassing a minor that was repeatedly telling him to stop be public, which is really funny considering that me not posting the clip was inadvertently doing him a favor, because everyone who's listened to it has been made extremely uncomfortable, with some saying that the clip actually makes him look worse than how I presented him in my video, especially because the piece of shit is giggling the entire time I'm fucking begging him to stop. The biggest gripe they had was that by not including the clip, I was removing context. What context? Well, the only thing I could gather in terms of context was that the sexual harassment was done as a joke that was not meant to be taken sexually, even though the joke was repeatedly saying that I, as a 16-year-old, was sucking my adult friend 10 years my senior's dick. I don't give a fuck that it was a joke. That was unambiguous sexualization of a minor. And the fact that it was said in the manner of, haha, porn is my humor, doesn't matter? Also, I mentioned in my video that the things Kayden said to me and posted in front of me was often done as a joke, wherein the gist is basically that he would push sexual boundaries, often under the guise of comedy, either by comments directly crudely sexualizing me, or by posting and saying very inappropriate, often explicit things in front of me. A quick question though, does that change the fact that those jokes were still A, sexual in nature, B, making the underage recipient uncomfortable, which they voiced, or C, just to repeat, directed at a minor 11 years your junior? If the answer is no, which it is, then it's not groundbreaking perception-altering context that is going to make you look any better. Let me explain something real quick. There were two reasons I did not show the clip. The first is that it's humiliating and I'm the victim of what happened. It's my story to tell, and if I don't want to publicize a clip of me being sexually harassed as a minor to the whole of YouTube, despite how much the guy who sexually harassed me wants me to because he thinks it'll make him look better, then that should be my decision. The second reason is that I did not want attention to shift to the host of the stream, who was incidentally revealed in my follow-up stream was Pr3. I was nervous and pretty certain that if I said exactly who the other adult was in that stream, despite the fact that Liam was also there, didn't mention that part either, focus would have been taken off of Kayden and put onto Pr3. For a few reasons, I didn't want that, and I didn't want blame for what happened to suddenly be pushed onto her. Not only, as I mentioned, was Pr3 intoxicated in that stream and wasn't even paying attention to what was going on, but even then, she still stepped in and stopped things. She was also the one who I mentioned made him take down his lewd sex toy gifts and told him that shit was not allowed. Pr3 is the only adult that I had who, when she saw this shit happening, shut it down. She made an effort to protect me when she saw adults being irresponsible, and what Kayden did isn't about her. It wasn't her job to make sure that Kayden, someone she trusted, wasn't sexually harassing a minor and detailing BDSM to them. I'm sure she trusted her friends to fucking be adults and not do that. And again, when she did see shit slip, shut it down. Kayden was an adult. Kayden knew better. Anyways, guess what Kayden and Blaze tried to do that entire call?
Like, let's be frank. I'm very much on fucking edge around Ponder as of late.
Why?
Ever since the call, I cannot, I don't know. I cannot fucking trust her worth a damn. I just can't.
What did she do that made this massive breach of trust?
First of all, this was her server.
Yeah.
Okay? She did not do her due diligence in her own server before involving minors in it.
All right.
Okay? So we were associating with each other the way that we always had.
Mm-hmm.
We were making jokes.
Be a problem.
I'm gonna be upfront with you, Ponder. You are not blameless in this.
I'm aware. I've apologized to Chuuli countless times. Well, not countless times.
I know you've
multiple
apologized to her. I know you've apologized to her. I get that. But this situation is painted with a brush that conveniently omits you.
That's up to Chuuli.
And puts other people under a light. I don't like that.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. This is from Chuli's perspective. And it's about who Chuuli is concerned with. This isn't about whether or not all things are equal. If Chuuli has decided that Ponder doesn't play that much of a role in their trauma, that's not something we can judge. We can complain about it maybe and talk about, lack of consistency or lack of broad idea, but that's Chuli's
I understand that.
Yeah, unsurprisingly, that entire call was filled with Kayden and Blaze using methods, some discreet, some bold, to push blame onto Ponder or downplay and distance Kayden from his past actions. One of these included Kayden using our favorite line of, "I'm a completely different person than I was then."
I am in no way happy with my actions from back then. I am a completely different person than I was back then. Anybody who's been around me or anybody who's talked to me, I have a feeling, Autumn, you and I knew each other back then.
Yeah.
You can I bet you, and I'm saying this more of a just assumption, that you can tell that I'm a completely different person than I was back then right now.
It's been a while. I think we rarely spoke.
I can't fucking do this shit. Blaze went on to use this as grounds to make the claim that how I presented the situation versus what actually happened were two wildly different things, basically full on implying that I was being disingenuous, which, ironic.
I understand that, I do. But her perspective on it versus the truth of it are two wildly different things. She can keep that in the video, she can paint it however she wants in that video. But I know what happened. And I don't like what I'm seeing.
There was also Kayden vehemently repeating himself that he was never sexual towards me and only ever was around me, which is just fucking not true, as evident by the prime example in my original video. Even if you were never sexually attracted to me, as you've stated and as I believe, how the fuck is repeatedly telling me that I'm sucking off my adult friend, not sexualizing me and being sexual towards me? You directly involved me in the sexually charged joke. There's also a lot of shit that you did that can be argued as being sexual towards, which is why I felt the need to speak out about more of the shit you did in my follow-up stream, which I'll be repeating here. Because I knew that Kayden was going behind the scenes trying to paint a wildly different picture than what actually happened, intentionally or no. The most egregious example that I can remember is when I made an uninformed comment about BDSM as an either 14 or 15-year-old when Kayden would have been 26. I don't remember the exact thing brought up, but it had to do with the lack of control in a sexual partner, probably through bondage, which Kayden is into. And when I heard him detailing said lack of control, I made the comment of either, "That's rape," or "That's rapey," because it weirded me the fuck out and I did not like the situation he was describing. And instead of realizing that he maybe shouldn't be talking about his BDSM fantasies in front of a freshman in high school, he flew off the handle and started screaming at me about how I was calling him a rapist, and decided that I needed to be educated on the topic. He then proceeded to show me this table, which I recall him saying was one of his favorite images, explaining the difference between BDSM and abuse. fucking awesome. Yeah, the other shit like you spamming gifs of sex toys because haha porn and linking up pinup galleries right in front of me can be argued as you being sexual around instead of towards, which didn't fucking matter because I wasn't just a passive bystander. I told you these things made me uncomfortable, and I have proof from the time of me talking about how you always contested my discomfort and downplayed the sexual nature of things you were exposing me to. This, on top of the whole educating me about BDSM, are just more and more examples of you desensitizing me to sexual content as a child, which is a grooming behavior and really set me up for a great time with all of the other surrounding men I had to deal with. So while I don't believe that Kayden wanted to groom me into a sexual or romantic relationship, I do believe grooming tactics were at play and that I was groomed into being okay with and even entertaining sexual behavior, subjects, and content when I was a child by him and many others. By the way, it was me coming forward about those other things on the stream that caused Blaze to accuse me of playing stupid games and Kayden to accuse me of leading a harassment campaign against him, because I guess he's the victim or some shit. So it looks like I was right to doubt his apology once I learned of what happened in that call, as well as this stupid fucking tweet that he posted. I can't fucking deal with this shit. To this day, Kayden has not said or even allowed any mention of what the fuck he actually did publicly on any of his platforms. That comment, which was on my video and had no connection to his platforms, is the only place he ever went into specifics, and that rubs me incredibly the wrong way. I'm a completely different person. Fuck you, Kayden. As a matter of fact, fuck you, Christopher Wensink. Your real name, because that's who you are. You can make your online alias whatever you want it to be it Kayden Marks or Kayden Monroe, but at the end of the day, you're still Chris, a man who hurt me by violating my sexual boundaries and desensitizing me to sexual content like BDSM, all while I was a kid. I was waking up at 6 in the morning to get ready for first period class while you did this shit. So fuck you, Chris. You are and will always be that man. So be a better version of him off the internet. Fuck your voice acting career. Okay. I'm done talking about these two for now. I'm fully prepared for whatever reaction they have from this, and I'm ready to throw hands as always. Anyways, back to Nezzie. So, let's talk about Nezzie's actions following the release of my video on Heaton. Just for a refresher, here is what I actually said about Nezzie in the video. There was also notable FCK member and groomer enabler Nezziemonster, who very discreetly, not really, tweeted that day insinuating that I was simply waiting for the opportunity to treat someone like garbage and didn't care about the safety of others like I stated, despite me being arguably the most harmed and vulnerable subject of Liam's abuse. I love having to point that out because you fucks hated me so much. Which is also funny because now that Nezzie has been in the hot seat for damn near a year for enabling a groomer and lying about that groomer's actions and their knowledge of them to others in the community, has switched to the defense that they were a stupid 19-year-old and obviously shouldn't be held to the same standard as today. So where was that compassion and understanding for me when I was 19 and had a single outburst on Twitter, especially when I didn't even do anything actually wrong? I should note that I called Nezzie out on this on Twitter recently, and instead of apologizing, they simply had another enabler of shit behavior in the community, Avi Haltmann, block me. Bitches act like accountability shot their parents in front of them, I swear to God. So that's it. A bit scathing in the tone and presentation, but overall just talking about Nezzie's actions, their switching up on their mentality and morals to conveniently benefit them, and their addiction to dodging accountability at every turn with the help of their at the time boyfriend, Avi. Yeah, didn't know about that last part until after my video, and I found out because Nezzie had a complete crash out on their Twitter and took my brief coverage of their actions as a romantic attack? Attack on their romantic life? Let's just read the thread.
Calling me a groomer enabler while ignoring the multiple times I called them out and cut them off is fucking wild. Go fuck yourself. Take your AI bullshit and go. Stay mad at fucking everything and everyone. Stay mad he chose me over you. Live your life as a vindictive person. Bye-bye. I hate the fact I contributed to this community in any way. It brought out the worst in me, and I'm tired of BS like this.
In the words of Barbara Howard,
"Sweet baby Jesus and the grown one too."
What the hell was that? So, first order of business, telling me to stay mad about everything and everyone over the video that discussed how I was isolated over my abuser, abused and gaslit as a minor by my abuser, sexually taken advantage of and harassed by several adult men in my sphere, all while you are fully aware that you befriended my abuser? Do not pass go, do not collect $200. I'd say go directly to hell, but let's be honest, you'll be lucky if you make it to hell. I legitimately can't tell if you're just a fucking idiot or actually evil, or both. My money's on both, because in my opinion, you don't do and say the things that Nezzie has done without some form of sinister intentions. And it seems more like Nezzie's foil is that they're too stupid to refrain from going full cartoon villain mode in front of everyone. Anyways, I've already talked about how the calling out of Toasty that Nezzie did was entirely bullshit and not at all how they wanted it to be perceived. So that leaves us with the elephant in the room. Stay mad, he chose me over you. So, this is about Avi, as I've been hinting at. Again, if that was news to you, don't worry, it was to me too. The only reason I found that out immediately is because I know who the he is. The context didn't make sense to me at the time, but Avi's the only one who would even remotely fit into it, which we'll get into in a second. How the fuck everyone else found out though, I have no idea. Because yeah, when I first became aware of the fact that this tweet existed, I already saw people speculating on who the he was, followed by people immediately figuring out that it was Avi. According to everyone I've spoken to who knew about Avi and Nezzie's relationship, they wanted to keep it private and only known to friends. So my best guess is that someone from the inner circle spilled that info into a slightly larger circle, and then that information got passed down into progressively larger circles until the info got to the public. So as I stated in the beginning of this video, yes, Avi and I dated for a short while in 2023, so I was an adult during that time. However, I do have a long history with that man, as previously mentioned, that I will be going into later in this video, but right now, since Nezzie decided to out this fact as well as publicize the narrative that I somehow want this used Q-tip of a man back in my life and I'm mad he's involved in someone else's romantically, I feel it necessary to detail a bit of how fucking stupid that narrative was, given how I was treated by Avi when I was in contact with him. To be frank, without going into too much detail yet, I was not treated well in that relationship. I was constantly ignored. It was pretty common for me to be left on red for 1 to 2 days without receiving any communication. Even in situations where he told me he was available to speak to, he would just disappear. I did not feel cherished or even liked by him during that time, and it really hurt being shown how much he didn't care about me despite us apparently dating. Things did not last, and though he showed apparent remorse when we stopped talking, I no longer trusted him. For good fucking reason. This was made even more so when I later found out after the relationship that there were things in the past Avi had said about not just me, but the abuse I dealt with at the hands of Feghost. Because of fucking course he did. Because everything leads back to my abuse situation. Because these people are fucking gross. The first has to do with the confrontation I had with him in February of 2022 over his complete lack of condemning Heaton's blatant and grotesque victim shaming of me that happened only a couple months prior. You see, Avi knew exactly what Heaton said. He told me as much when I initially brought it up to him the day it happened, and he voiced his distaste of Heaton's words and why it made no sense for her to even go after me like she did. Of course, this didn't mean anything because Avi would continue on to act as though nothing happened and be best buddies with Heaton in the public eye, posting about how she, the person who just called me a gaslighting manipulative bitch and not a victim who'd be responsible for my abuser's suicide if I didn't shut the fuck up about them, was such a great friend. This fucking stung so bad, as Avi was actually someone I confided in a lot about what happened with Feghost after I cut them off. He was one of the people that I kept in the loop while I was working on my initial video. Liam actually reached out to him during this time, not knowing that Avi already knew what they had admitted to me at the time, and Avi played stupid to, I guess, see how Liam would react and talk to someone who they thought had no idea what was going on. Avi even gave me permission to use the screenshots of their DM history in my video after I asked for it. Anyways, I confronted Avi about his refusal to stand up against Heaton's revolting behavior towards me when he was apparently my friend who cared about me, and after a bit of back and forth, he apologized to me for his inaction and told me that he wouldn't stay silent anymore in the face of his friends being genuinely deplorable, and that he really did care about me. Come to find out after the relationship that during the back and forth and apology, Avi was begging for advice from a mutual friend of ours that I'm still friends with, and when he did not get the expected reaction to his apology and was also confronted by Clown Teeth, he threw his hands up in the air and told my friend that I had planted and used him when I exposed Liam, as though he was not the person to tell me that Liam reached out to him, and as though he was not the one who made the decision to play dumb, instead painting me as some manipulative puppeteer. He also said to this friend that he would not throw his relationship with Heaton in the trash despite how badly she hurt me. How sad, knowing that that happened anyway. The second and even more infuriating instance happened in October in 2022, after we met up in person earlier that year, where Avi walked into a group of people victim shaming me in Heaton's server, yes, the fucking bitch who he said he'd defend me against, and joined in on the shit talking about how he and everyone else were so much better victims than I was when they called out someone by the name of Ray Kohai. Yeah, apparently when Avi said he wouldn't keep silent anymore or refuse to take any action, he meant he would join in on shit-talking me in my abuse situation. Keep in mind, he posted his message only a few messages down the line from Bubbling Brook, a real fucking piece of work in this situation, literally saying, "It's hard to be a bad victim, but Chuuli sure found a way." And I'm supposed to believe that this guy ever cared about me? I actually confronted him about these actions through Ellie in December of 2023. Why? Because they were best friends. And Ellie actually believed in me getting to hash stuff out with or get apologies from people who treated me horrendously when I didn't act right after I came forward about being abused. Anyways, after relaying very genuine wrongs done to me by Avi, he did not apologize. This grown fuck instead decided to completely undermine every grievance I had with his behavior behind the scenes in relation to my abuse situation and accused me of just being there to start a fight, denying that this had anything to do with the abuse I dealt with. This is the guy that Nezzie was certain I'm jealous over. And I did not know why Nezzie was so convinced that I had beef with them because they were dating my ex-boyfriend. Because firstly, again, I didn't even know that was happening. And secondly, I didn't even understand how any of my actions regarding Nezzie could even be read as hinting to me being upset about that. The problems I laid out very clearly and transparently with Nezzie when I was putting them on blast specifically had to do with things they did to me or said about other people they've hurt, like Teddy and the other victims of the FCK. The only reason I ever brought up Avi is because he admitted to blocking me and other people hurt by Nezzie from their Twitter account when he was given access, helping them dodge accountability and having to apologize. I have since learned, however, that the reason Nezzie was so convinced of this was because of things Avi was saying behind the scenes. Hint, it has to do with that pesky abuse claim I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But Nezzie, not only did you look and sound like a high school mean girl as well as just fucking goofy, but also the misogyny went crazy? Avi is a lying, unremorseful, backstabbing dickhead who double majored in being the most unresponsive and boring partner in the world to me. But I'm apparently so wrapped up in his romantic life after the fact and use that as my primary purpose for disliking other people because woman brain, I guess? Awesome. I'll be sure to let my girlfriend know since this will be news to her. Because yeah, I'm very happily taken, and very well taken care of at that, by a woman. I do not care about the romantic availability of my musty, dusty, crusty ass ex-boyfriend or who he's dating now. The only thing I have to say to any future partner of his committed to that path is good luck. Hope to God he does not treat you like he treated me, because he will, and in specific to you, Nezzie, he already had talked shit about you. I don't want to blame or grill someone for being lied to and manipulated by someone they trust, but when you use that to do harm to others publicly because you didn't get proof of what you were saying, that's on you. With that out of the way, now is unfortunately the time to discuss some much darker topics given recent events. I would like to preface by saying that something I've always said about Avi, even after the relationship ended and even after I realized what a piece of shit he was that he was at the very least careful with me when I was a minor. Something I'm sure everyone is aware was not a luxury I had very often, especially when dealing with adult men. Not even in the realm of just sexual topics, but heavy adult topics in general. I was 14 when I met him, and he was 17, and when looking back on that time as a new adult, I didn't have the same awful memories with him that I did with other men. In light of revelations made during the last year, I have to say that this perception was distorted by my feelings for him, and he was in fact quite harmful, especially as I learned earlier on when it came to how he treated others. Specifically, I would like to put a spotlight on the way someone by the name of Rin was treated by Avi on Twitter back in February 2022. Preemptively, I want to say a couple of things. One, that Rin was an adult during this event, 21 to be specific, which as you'll see doesn't make anything okay, and 2, that I had no idea any of this happened until April of last year, as this was during the time when I had Avi muted on Twitter due to his repeated friendly interactions with Heaton. I don't want any misconception about this, because I would go on to express romantic interest in him a year later. Anyways, Rin is someone who's had many public spats with people, especially on Twitter, and in this situation, someone by the name of Unlisted was defending him of his own volition against people beefing with them, including Avi. This person apparently made a Pearl Harbor joke that Avi, who is Jewish, read as anti-Semitic. Now, whether or not there was anti-Semitism, I can't say. I didn't see the joke, nor is there any remaining evidence of it, and also I don't really feel comfortable or as though it's my place to determine that kind of thing. Anti-Semitism is not okay, and neither is what Avi did following this. Because in response, Avi brought up Rin's genitals, Rin is transmask by the way, to run with the narrative that Unlisted was only defending Rin in order to sleep with him. Rin confronted him on this, saying,
I didn't condone this. Plus, please don't talk about my quote-unquote pussy as if I would fuck anybody. It makes me feel disgusting.
And Avi's response to this clear-as-day boundary was to tell Rin that they were self-reporting, as all he had said was that they wouldn't have sex with Unlisted, implying that Rin revealed his true desire to do so. Now, I can't say if the aforementioned person Unlisted was being anti-Semitic or not, but repeatedly bringing up an AFAB's genitals accompanied by their pronouns to highlight their trans identity reads to me as incredibly transphobic and misogynistic. Whether or not Avi would say this about a man or AMAB person, I can't say. But I will say that I have seen and even been subjected to this pattern of being sexualized and deemed a sexual reward whenever someone, typically a man, agrees with a woman or AFAB person. It happened to me because Akumu dared to interact with my Twitter post and was immediately accused of wanting to have sex with me, when we have never spoken. Can I say for certain that this was that? No, but treating an AFAB like the only reason their words would ever be taken seriously and defended, especially by a man, as if they were a sexual reward to be won, is a misogynistic trope. And it's also just a fucking weirdo thing to say, especially to the men who are often the accused party. Like, be fucking normal. To be clear, Avi did apologize to Rin through someone named Yoon, who's a whole bag of shit on their own in my opinion, about this incident in the infamous call they had in the Cat's Lair.
I have apologies. The first one is from Avi, and he says, I legitimately apologize for going back on my word, especially out of pure spite. No matter how I feel about Gal as a person, that goes against my morals as a person, and I recognize it's a mistake I won't make again. I apologize for making jokes about someone's genitalia in such a crude way, and in an admittedly immature fashion. The point I was trying to make with that comment is relevant if the comment itself crosses a variety of boundaries that should be obvious to someone who knew Gal and has common sense. I recognize that the way I went about defending Yoon after the call was very aggressive, and I contributed to a group behavior that didn't take into account Gal's mental health. While I never wanted them to kill themselves, the way it came off could be seen as that from the eyes of someone like Gal. So I apologize for participating in what was deemed harassment by Gal multiple times.
Now, obviously, this is Rin's apology to accept and no one else's, and apparently he does not accept it, but from where I stand, repeatedly bringing up someone's genitals and describing them in sexually explicit scenarios in a degrading, bigoted manner, even after the point where they have told you in no uncertain terms that they are entirely uncomfortable with you doing so, all at the ripe age of 22, is not crude and immature, it's disgusting and completely immoral sexual harassment, and I will not use any term lighter to describe it. Had I known of this behavior, I would have never dated him, and honestly, not even stayed friends with him. I have zero tolerance for this kind of thing. I recommend watching Rin's own videos talking about their experiences with this community, and especially with Avi, because as you'll see, this man was obsessed with making sexual jabs at Rin. Okay. Now's the time where I have to talk about some stuff that makes me truly, unironically, extremely uncomfortable, which is probably funny to hear after everything I've talked about. I really struggled to talk about what happened between Kayden and I in my Heaton video, as I didn't really have the time that I did with the other instances to emotionally stomach what had happened. I've tried to take the same amount of time with this situation, but I'm gonna be honest, it hasn't given me the same ability to chill out, if that makes sense. Especially because I still struggle to reconcile with the fact that I became attracted to this person when I was a minor and when this stuff was happening. I've mentioned that Avi was 17 when I first met him, and that's true. But I didn't actually start really talking to him until he was an adult, when he was 18, and we kept pretty consistent contact into my adulthood, when he was turning 21. So let me just flashbang y'all with some information really quick. Avi has a sneezing fetish. For some reason, I remember this information being somewhat public knowledge in the later years I was in contact with him. I don't know if that's the case, but even if it wasn't, given what I'm about to discuss, I don't think privacy is a luxury I need to afford him. How do I know this? Because he told me, in detail. I remember how I found out. I could have only been 15 and he was 18, but it was just him and I in a call, and he basically made a guessing game out of it, and if I could guess, he would tell me. I did guess, and so he did tell me. It kind of became a joke between us how I found out based on the clue I had because it was pretty weird, and if that's where things ended, I wouldn't have even brought this up. But it went far beyond that. For a long time. I learned that Avi commissioned not just fetish art porn, but also commissioned pornographic videos of real people partaking in the fetish, and had it described to me in detail what exactly about it got him off. I think the most disturbing thing I can remember, which I have no evidence for because it happened in a voice call when I was 16, was that he was bragging about how he got the last laugh with an ex that had cheated on him because he got her hooked on the fetish to the point where she couldn't finish without implementing it. I don't even remember how that conversation came about, but it did. I know I've been showing screenshots of this, and I'm not sure if anyone will see that I was asking about these things in the DMs and dismissing how weird this is, but if that's the case, then ugh. Firstly, I think it's actually more concerning that someone talked about their fetish enough and for long enough that the minor became interested in knowing more details about it. And secondly, are you fucking kidding me? I don't know who needs to hear this, my ex-boyfriend apparently, but if a minor asks you about your sexual fetish, don't fucking detail it to them. Although, even in this situation, Avi was the one who brought the topic to me, which then prompted me to ask. That, and also I was 17, so yeah, maybe just don't talk about your fetish and how it gets you off to a 17-year-old while you are literally 20, and tell them how you've apparently paid people to get naked and sneeze, or how your ex couldn't come without sneezing after you got her hooked on it. No one cares if the minor asked you about it first. Now, to address whether or not I think this all counts as the big G word, to be frank, yes, I do. And the revelation that I had a romantic attraction from a young age to someone who talked to me like this while I was a minor for years makes me levels of uncomfortable I don't know how to describe. I feel like that is a conversation for me to have with a licensed professional and not my YouTube audience, but just know I'm extremely not okay with the discoveries I've made about my history with Avi, and I feel a knot in my stomach every time I have to think about it. I used to sit here agonizing over the idea and think, it's only 3 years. It's not that bad. Because I was used to men much older doing worse in an obviously malicious manner. And I don't want to execute someone for stuff they did as an 18-year-old. And then it dawned on me that that's how this happened. It's why I told myself it was okay and didn't tell him to stop, even though I shouldn't have had to. And then I became attracted to him, knowing this stuff, and then obviously was curious in knowing more, and he told me more. I'm saying this more for myself than anyone else, but this was wrong of him. I know I mentioned not wanting to execute someone at 18 for this shit, but as a 20-year-old, what the fuck are you doing? What business does a 20-year-old have detailing his sex life and fetish to someone who isn't even in their senior year of high school? And he even argued with me when I voiced discomfort over someone else effectively doing to another minor what he had done to me. And I didn't even realize until he tried to guilt me by asking, does that make me a pedophile? It really disturbs me that once Avi saw his grip slipping in that regard, he immediately used everything that he was doing to me to reestablish it. I'll be honest, a lot of this doesn't make sense to me. The fact that we had these conversations when I was so young and I learned so much about what got him off and his sex life, but in our actual relationship, he couldn't have cared less about me. All I really know is that I'm always the one who was hurt, and then was being painted as jealous and obsessive over this guy's new partner who has no idea what their fuck they're talking about. And before anyone asks, no, I didn't engage in his fetish in our relationship. Not that it's anyone's business what I would or would not have been willing to do in our relationship, but I think I will actually die if that becomes a believed rumor. He complimented my nose in the beginning and asked if he could touch it, but we never met up once in the actual relationship, though he tried at a couple of points. Unfortunately, that's not where things end, as now it's time to talk about everything Avi has been doing behind the scenes since we broke up, and what ultimately led to Nezzie publicizing our relationship in the first place. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I had known of the abuse claim from Avi since November, and I had given my DMs with Avi over to Lio to have him parse through them. This was going to culminate in Avi being confronted eventually no matter what, but something happened that catalyzed everything. I was alerted by a friend that Liam had returned to Twitter under a new burner account. I immediately archived everything said on that account, and one thing that stuck out to me in particular was a thread that they made that reads as follows.
I just wanted to say something about Nezziemonster and Avi and Heaton and all the rest of them. I understand what y'all did was out of concern or came from a place of genuine interest in my betterment or whatever. But genuinely, what you did to me was 10 times worse than anything anyone else could have ever done or will do. You are not handing out pamphlets. You are actively trying and failing to nurse someone back into a community that wants nothing to do with them. For the future, just let the disgraced person, in this case me, figure shit out on their own. You're not helping me by coming to me and saying, these people will be in the call, by the way, Avi. And you def aren't helping by pitching a fit over my behalf after I already took my leave, Heaton. You were giving me an out to stick around when I should have rightfully left for good. Play pretend therapist all you want. You aren't gonna get to the bottom of what's wrong with me by filling my DMs with weird psychology bullshit, Nezzie. I'm a grown-ass person, I'll be fine. That's it, I'm done complaining. Back to work.
This thread caught my attention in particular as it's basically Liam calling out people who in some way defended or tried to help them after the expose. Two of which I already knew about, that being Heaton and Nezzie, but I had never known of any kind of interaction between Avi and Liam after they were exposed. However, there was only one call I could think of where the context of them needing to be warned of who was in call would even be remotely applicable, and that was the call that me and the other victims of Liam had with them in the old Senate server, where we basically planned to ambush them under different server nicknames. However, if there's one thing we should all know at this point, it's that Liam cannot be trusted for shit at their word. But then Lio was able to get into contact with them on their Discord account and retrieved proof that Avi did in fact warn them that we were going to be disguised in the call. To anyone wondering why Liam would out this information and hand it over so readily, from how I see it, there are two possibilities. One is that Liam called out people who they know I don't like for their actions regarding how they defended them, which would make sense considering this was right after I uploaded my video on Jar where I mentioned for the first time publicly that Nezzie befriended them, and did this in order to get back into the good graces of either the public, their victims, or both. The second is that Liam could genuinely have reflected on their actions over time and spoke out against the shit that we had to deal with because of people like Heaton and Nezzie in order to quash any remaining belief that they should be defended over their actions and help us. If you know me, you know that I would never trust Liam's actions or intentions again in my life. But also, if it is somehow the case that they're being genuine, then how I feel should have no effect on their want to make right. Anyways, this as well as something else regarding things Avi was saying in private is what catalyzed the confrontation. And on March 2nd, Lio, along with Ellie, had a call interrogating Avi. I actually wasn't allowed in that call, something that Lio now regrets, but was allowed to relay questions to him to ask Avi, as well as leave a send-off message for him. I don't really care that I wasn't allowed in, because that decision had nothing to do with bias or a want to hold me back. And unlike Nezzie, who threw a temper tantrum about not being able to be in that call, despite informing them being a huge possible liability, I understand that there are things in this world bigger than my fucking feelings. And we knew getting me into that call would pose way too big of a risk of Avi just bouncing. In that call, Lio was able to get Avi to admit to God so much, but the most important things are that he admitted to warning Liam, and doing so because he was still mad at me over, quote, how I treated him, alluding to the aforementioned claim that I was abusive to him.
I let her know that it was Manhurt's call.
Oh, good. You're honest. Awesome. That's so fucking great, Avi.
Why? You know what Phagos is like, you know the harm they've done, the objective wrong, and you even told Ponder in a DM that you hope they get closure, but then you turn around and warn them. I want to know why.
I did it because I was still angry, and because, to a much lesser extent, I thought that it would be way less productive if they just got jumped. And
that is not just to make, Avi.
So instead,
that was not your call.
So instead, we wound up having a call where Phagos just shut down because you decided to tell them that they were being discussed. What is it that made you so upset that you went to warn somebody that you know objectively is awful and has abused multiple people?
I was still upset at Chuuli.
For what?
Fucking knew it.
Over how that they treated me.
And it's at this point that Lyle confronts the abuse claim from Avi head on and reveals that he's had access to Avi and I's DMs, as well as what he actually found in those DMs.
Let me go ahead. Let me go ahead real quick. Let me pull the rug out from under you on that one, too. Me looking into this hasn't just been me getting DMs from Phagos to verify, because Phagos outed you on that publicly on Twitter about a week ago. I also have had unfettered access to your DMs with Chuuli. Now, we can either be honest here or you can play games. Whichever one's going to depend on you. You have been running in the background.
I was in the wrong.
Yeah, and you were.
No, I've been in the wrong.
Yeah, and you've been
Absolutely.
in the wrong. You've been in the wrong for more than that too, because you have been running in the background, trying to convince other people that Chuuli is abusive. I haven't seen an ounce of abuse from Chuuli in those DMs, and I think we both know why. So I'm going to tell you right now what I have. I have DMs of you being sexual with them before and after they were a minor. I have you sending things that even a relationship does not excuse. I have you being pretty emotionally abusive to them. I have you doing something else, not related, oddly enough, to Chuuli, but to Heaton, a person you claim is your friend, and you know has trauma about people talking trash about them, where you are literally talking about how you are discouraging other people from commissioning them, something you know is how they make money. And on top of that, throughout your entire DMs, and we had this logged, you talk more trash about Heaton than Chuuli does, which I shouldn't have to tell you is embarrassing.
And it takes a minute, but Avi admits that he lied about me being abusive and says that it's because he's a compulsive liar.
You have spent no shortage of time. And I'm well aware that Chuli's not liked in general in these circles, but you've actively made it a point to poison people against Chuuli. I want to know why.
No, I'm not going to sit here justifying that. I'm going to say that it was trying to...
That's not cool. That's what I asked you. You have done your hobby? And you never take out Chuuli. I'm not. You're some guy that for Ponder. If you had taken out nothing. You, specifically, had less of problems dealing with the stress and anxiety because you knew Heat's hit that she was wrong and you didn't tell her. Instead, you decided to gossip Chuli's DMs. That alone should make you right. I want to know why.
Yeah, and I'm fine with leaving any space with these people. I'm fine with with doing anything that needs to be done at this point.
Okay, what needs to be done right now is I need an answer. Why?
The only answer I can give you to that is that I am a compulsive liar.
Well, that's the most honest thing you've said in a while.
We're going to get into how that's very much not the full story in a minute, but I want to touch more in depth on Avi admitting to sabotaging 3 victims' attempt at closure because he wanted to retaliate against the one who he had victimized as well. Let me say something that is absolutely not going to sound good or healthy, because it isn't, but it's true. I can handle a lot. I've been subjected to so much in my life before I even became a content creator. And we're all aware of how horribly I've been treated and talked about since I did become a creator. It might sound sad, but I'm in a way used to the dehumanization and the things people say about me. But when people use how they feel about me to hurt my friends in a very vulnerable and sensitive way, that gets to me. And it makes me feel like I should go away in order to keep that from happening. Now, to be clear, I'm not going away, but the fact that you ever did something fucked up enough to even make me consider that with how brazen I've been this past year and some change, it speaks for itself. A lot of people, me included, wanted to know how Avi even knew about the call happening and that we were going to be in it. The answer, according to Avi, is Heaton.
I mean, if you want the truest, honest answer, the reason I didn't tell you was because I was in a room with people who already knew. I was in Heaton and Brooke's house. I talked to them about it. They were the ones who told me.
Told you what?
Told you what?
That it was going to be, Heaton, not Heaton. It was going to be Ponder and Chuuli in the call.
The story goes that Avi was visiting Heaton at her and Bubbling Brooke's house. Yes, the piece of shit who said I sure found a way to be a bad victim. And Heaton openly discussed that the Faghost call was going to happen and that Clown and I were going to be in it. Now there's no evidence of this as it was an apparent real-life conversation, but I will point out the day that Avi warned Liam was the same day that Heaton found out through Lio, when relayed by Ponder, that Clown and I had asked that she not be allowed in the call and demanded to know why we were trying to go above her. And taking time zones into account, Avi warned Liam only an hour after Heaton pulled up in Ponder's DMs to start being a bitch. Avi also claims he told Heaton that he messaged Liam, and that Heaton said she wouldn't have done that.
You can
About
ask
lies.
Heaton. She was there in the room.
The room when they talked about the call happening, not when you were messaging Faghost. Do not try that. You just tried it.
I said to Heaton that I told Faghost.
And the response to that, and again, I'm saying that this is possibly you're lying, all right? I don't believe you, but let's go ahead and explore that. What was Heaton's response?
You have no reason to believe me, but you can ask her.
You just said you're a compulsive liar, Avi. Do not give me that shit.
What was her alleged reaction? Let's see if you can make things up in real time.
She said she wouldn't have done it.
She wouldn't have done it, or that you shouldn't do it? Did you push this alleged fantasy that I'm going to assume happened? Were you saying you wanted to, you planned to, you were thinking to, or that you did?
That I did.
Heaton, however, claims this is false as far as I'm aware, and that she never knew of that happening. So now I'm stuck with two people who have lied about me and my abuse publicly, calling each other liars. I don't know who to believe, and I never will. I will say, though, even if Heaton didn't know what Avi did, I think it's fucking despicable to be so flagrantly talking about sensitive information regarding a victim of abuse's situation to people who you know hate them, especially when the reason you were confronted is because the victim in question wanted to make sure you were not around when that call happened, because you hurt them. I also want to note that I relayed my questions asking for him to take some fucking accountability or explain himself on December 17th. It had only been 2 days since he did something regarding my abuse situation with Liam to hurt me, and yet when Ellie relayed those questions, he gave her lip and told her that his actions were the fault of me emotionally abusing him. I've already discussed how the thing with making me out to be some manipulative puppeteer is bullshit, but can you please explain to me how talking shit about the way I lashed out at the person who abused me after I let you into that abuse story and trusted you with it and met you in person, can you explain to me how tone policing a victim period is the direct result of me emotionally abusing you? I'm really curious because personally, no matter how much I hate someone, I would never police how a victim talks about the abuse they dealt with and the person who did it. Even in my video on Heaton, I never went that far. And we all know that I hate Heaton. Not only that, but Avi went on to discourage Ellie even trying to help me get into talks with some of the people who treated me horribly, and basically implied that I didn't deserve closure on that front, or else I was talking out of my ass when I said I wanted closure. He also told Ellie that if I decided to speak up about anything publicly, as was speculated to be the alternative to privately hashing things out, that everyone who's been victimized by me would come forward about how I abused not only Avi, but also apparently Susie and the SEC at large. I want to go ahead and interrogate that attitude right now because it did a complete 180 in 2024. So at the end of 2023, when he had that conversation with Ellie, he seemed very confident that if I said anything publicly, that I was going to be bashed and torn to shreds by the SEC. However, when I obliterated Heaton in April of last year on Twitter with tons of support, his tune completely changed, and when he found out that people were planning on making a cloud comm on my video on Heaton the second that I announced it, he vehemently advised against anyone making a public response to my video. These messages are from a Discord thread that was made in the Cloud Palace SCC group before it disbanded because of Doodletone's departure. And it is its own can of worms, but saving it for another time. So what is the actual reason why Avi felt such a need to discourage anyone speaking out publicly against me once it was clear that I had a lot of support from the public? The actual reason was that Avi was terrified of the thought of me coming forward about the things he did with me while I was underage, and was worried that the community poking the bear, me, as I announced that I'd be making a video on Heaton, would push me to speak out. Now, how I know that this weighed on Avi and kept him up at night, I'm gonna get into later, but right now I want to talk about how Avi went about dealing with this fear. Avi's way of protecting himself, as stated at the very beginning of this video, was to make me sound as horrible as possible with very serious allegations against me, because he wanted to make sure that no one would ever listen to me if I spoke up about the things he did. He did this by spreading the narrative that I, of course, abused him, but more specifically that I forced him into our relationship and threatened him, as stated by both Ellie and another SCC member by the name of Fractured Light.
You told me that Chuuli forced you into a relationship, emotionally forced you into a relationship. You told me that you didn't feel comfortable being in a relationship with them weeks after you agreed to be in a relationship with them. And what did I tell you? What was the first thing I said to you?
It wasn't healthy.
I told you not to lead them on, Avi. I told you that if you did not want to be in a relationship with somebody, you didn't have to be. And you kept making excuses to why you had to stay. You actively were making shit up because you were wanting me to think that you were being abused. You made me dislike Chuuli off of lies, Avi.
So, the stuff that I got told by Avi about Chuuli was essentially, you remember the situation in Pizza Time, like a bunch of people talked mad shit about Heaton, and like, we were pretty pissed about it because it was like, we just got done with a situation involving people talking shit about associates instead of talking to them directly. So, you know, that situation. I was mentioning it in a call in Donnie's media server, and Avi joined the call. I don't remember the full roster. I believe Airb was there, Temp was there, Waper was there, and I was there. However, I do think the Airb was deafened, and I just don't remember if Temp was there or not. I'm just guessing he was, because he's usually in call if Airb is. But essentially, we were talking about it, and Avi started going off about Sparrow, calling him all sorts of shit just because, like, of that. And then the topic switched to Ponder, to which Ponder was accused of doing a very similar thing to me that he accused Ponder of to you. And then following that, he said that Chuuli posted his house and tried to force him into a relationship with them, and then got mad when he chose Nezzie. So, like, that's what I was told in that call. The following day, I hear about the Nezzie video, and trying to learn from the mistake of not telling Heaton about the Heaton video, I tell Avi in the hopes he passes it to Nezzie, and that's where this DM conversation happens.
He also handled things by playing defense for and aligning himself with people who hurt me, like Kayden. Chris, fuck a screen name for these creeps, as I'm sure me talking about ways I was sexually victimized as a child scared the absolute fuck out of him. I was alerted by another member of the SCC named Kalila at the same time Liam's tweets were discovered, that Avi had previously spread the narrative that Ponder was a backstabbing snake who threw away her relationships with Kayden and Heaton to try and ruin their careers, which, what careers? He also alleged that what Kayden did to me was Ponder's fault because she let me into her 18+ server and said sexual things around me, both of which are not true. The server being referred to here was not 18+, and pornography was not allowed. Everyone was very much aware of how young I was, some just evidently didn't fucking care. He also very confidently called me, the victim of sexual maltreatment as a child, a psychopath, and joked about how Ponder was getting karma for sticking by my side. Still trying to figure out how that happened. Kalila also states that during an emotional breakdown, Avi compared me to someone that had hurt them, and said that he understood what it feels like to be manipulated by a sociopath because that's apparently what I did to him. This ended ended up hugely backfiring on him, as Kalila is a fucking beast and actually went to go watch my video on Heaton, and came back to Avi to confront him on the sob story that he fed them about Kayden. Avi proceeded to downplay everything he said and still try and push blame onto Ponder, which Kalila was not having, before all but admitting that he was still friends with Kayden, which then prompted Kalila to cut him off, pass these screenshots to a mutual friend of ours, who then passed them to me, Ponder, and Lio, and put us all in contact. Now, if you're curious how I know that what he did to me as a child was weighing on him, it's because of what he was saying in his text messages with Nezzie when they were dating, which I have. After Avi was confronted and subsequently ran off, I had a call with Nezzie on March 7th to talk about him and fully get onto the same page of what he was saying to them and what actually happened. That was not a call where I ran in and ripped them to shreds and screamed my head off, much as I wonder if that's what people wanted. Again, I favor practicality over my personal feelings if I think they'll get in the way of something I want or need, but also, if I'm being honest, I was too fucking tired and hurt and depressed to be angry at the time. I don't really like to let it show and just bare vulnerability for everyone to see, but everyone in my friend group who was around me at the time of this happening knows that it fucking hurt me really bad. It hurt knowing he hurt my friends as a way to get back at me. It hurt knowing he poisoned me to everyone just to avoid owning what he did. And it hurt to have to look back and see all the ways he broke down my walls when I was too young to know what was going on. I know some people were hoping that the call between us was going to be epic ponage, but I think on that front it's being missed how much damage Avi has done to me. However, just because I am a very emotional person who can be hurt doesn't mean I'm gonna take things lying down, as I'm sure we're all aware of now. I'm mostly just saying this for myself because I have to remind myself so often that I'm a multi-dimensional human being, but I guess I just want everyone to be aware of it as well. Anyways, the DMs. Avi really let it show in these DMs that he was terrified of me coming forward about the things he did to me, and admitted that's why he didn't want to say anything when Nezzie came at me on Twitter. He mentioned on several occasions during an argument that he was scared if he did anything that put him in my sight, that would put a target on his back and give me the idea or reason to come forward and call him out, like I have with a few other people who sexually mistreated me as a child. One of these times, he even admitted that he knew I had feelings for him from a young age, but didn't do anything about it because I, as a child, was apparently fucking terrifying, and Nezzie bought that shit immediately. Firstly, that's not true, as we all know, because he didn't do nothing. He specifically made sure I was in his grasp at that time. Secondly, I shouldn't have to say how pathetic it is that this guy who preyed on me tried to excuse it by saying, well, the child actually made advances on me first and I was too scared to do anything about it, so it's the child's fault. Literally just trying to claim reverse groomer, and how equally pathetic it is that Nezzie just ate that up and was ready to run with that narrative, seemingly to the point of running with it publicly. We'll get into that in a minute, but let's go back to the tweets that Nezzie sent out when I released my video on Heaton. Real quick, it should go without saying, but Avi was the one feeding the narrative to Nezzie, as they told me. However, Nezzie confirmed that they were the person who wrote up that thread and wanted to publish it. According to Nezzie, Avi didn't make any push for them to say anything about his and I's past relationship, and it seems more like Avi wanted to have the least involvement in the making and posting of that thread as possible, which led to Nezzie publicizing the narrative that I was a jealous ex. So, to get this straight, you were the one who decided to write up that thread about me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was kind of hoping there was a little bit more of a push from him, but it's whatever.
There was none.
So all he did was allow it.
Mm-hmm.
This actually really ended up backfiring on Nezzie, as them publicizing that was what made me not only publicly talk about Avi and I's relationship, but also talk more about that whole thing with others in private, which led to Lio telling me about the abuse claim. Peep the title, Useless Idiot. Now, something I want to point out here that I immediately questioned is the phrasing, chose Nezzie over me, which makes it sound like both of us were interested in Avi at the same time, and like I was being cheated on. But when I asked Nezzie when they and Avi started dating as Avi Avi didn't seem to know, it turns out that neither of them seemed to know the date that they started dating, which is really weird to me. Like, if someone asked me the day that my girl and I started dating, I'd be able to tell you immediately. With her permission, since I don't know if she wants that public. From everything I've heard about when they started dating, it doesn't sound like there was any overlap, which would corroborate Avi admitting that he literally just made it up entirely. Fuck my life.
This is from Chuuli, who, especially if it was between you and Nezzie, started the narrative that I was jealous of your relationship and disliked Nezzie for being your partner. Not only did I have eyes on another girl months before my Heaton video came out, I also made it very clear when you and I broke up that I did not like you at all anymore and never wanted to see you again, and most importantly, I had no idea you two were even together. So go ahead, tell me how that started.
It was something I made up in my fucking head because of how our relationship was, how it began, and how it ended.
So you lied to Nezzie too.
Based off of something that... Yes, I absolutely lied to Nezzie.
The last main thing I want to focus on in these messages is the arguments occurring. The first is from November 12th and consists of Nezzie being angry that Avi didn't defend them publicly when they came at me on Twitter about he and I's past relationship. They talked about Lio getting onto them for saying what they did about me and how Nezzie felt like they were left to deal with me alone. From what I've seen, I do believe this to be not only possible, but likely. I can totally see Avi letting Nezzie being a lightning rod for everything so that he could sit cozy in the background. Nezzie also really pushes and even guilts Avi to at least try to come forward about the abuse claim, saying that everyone would be on his side and help boost the narrative. Avi bends the knee very quickly in this conversation in terms of apologizing for not saying anything, but is still hesitant to come forward publicly and accuse me of abuse. He does, however, say that if I do anything regarding Nezzie again, that he would go mutually assured destruction on me. Something interesting I want to point out here is how 4 hours before this conversation, Nezzie had a conversation with Lio wherein they brought up alleged things I've done to them, and Lio pushed back on it.
That's a lot, so I'm going to respond in voice message. Teddy abandoning you with that explanation is not inherently mistreatment. That's their decision to make, and you kind of have to just deal with it. A lot of people abandoned me too. I'm not going to sit here and worry about that. Chuuli calling you a groomer enabler is apparently due to what was found in the FCK logs as well as in other servers back when you were in there and talking about it. I have told Chuuli to their face that I completely disagree with that sentiment. That's up to them. With Heaton, that's not about you at all. I don't know how you think that Chuli's lied about your relationship with Avi when they weren't even aware of it until you tweeted at them. And I don't know about the not liking you because of Avi at all. So even if that is true, that's not an inherently mistreatment of you just not liking you. If you want people to talk to you, you have to be open to that communication. That's part of the problem there. The bigger issue here is that whenever you are confronted with these negative emotions, your immediate response is to lash out at people instead of either trying to recognize whether they're right or wrong or just being able to blow them off because you don't take value in their words. And that's part of the problem here for you. This is something only you can change, and you have the full ability to do so. There's no amount of words I can tell you that's magically going to make you do what you need to do. It's a choice you have to make.
So if I'm reading this correctly, which is anyone's guess, it really looks like Nezzie stewed on the pushback they got from Lio and felt like if Avi came forward about everything, people, including friends at the time, like Lio, would agree with Nezzie on their apparent grievances. So they then took that and confronted Avi, followed by pressuring and guilting him to come forward. The second conversation was on January 23rd of this year, where Nezzie starts off by asking Avi if he'd want to do a therapy session with their therapist to talk about his abuser, me, to which Avi denies and has a little pity party over. There's a few reasons why I think Avi would be uncomfortable with this idea. The first is that he could just want to lessen discussion of me so that he doesn't have to deal with any more pushes to come forward. And the second could be that he was scared that the therapist might know enough about manipulative behaviors and notice that Avi was leaving something out. I'm not entirely sure. Avi then calls me a lonely bitch who will never find happiness, which We'll come back to that, and really tries to discourage Nezzie from looking for any kind of justice to be brought against me. To which Nezzie responds by really pulling out all the guilting methods in this conversation, and also tries to see if they can get Ponder on their side, which fuck you guys. Avi immediately discourages that, probably because he knew that Ponder would 1000% ask for proof of the abuse before just running with that claim. And after Nezzie tries to push Avi again to say something, he firmly plants his foot down, saying that he's safer saying nothing because he's just a nobody, so there's nothing I could do to hurt him publicly, and that coming forward would put him at risk because I could put his future in medicine at jeopardy. The screenshots then end with Nezzie saying, "I will rot in hell," followed by Avi making a joke insinuating that he hoped I died from the fires that ravaged the LA and inland areas of Southern California this January. You know, I really hope that everyone knows exactly who Avraham Blumenfeld is and what he's done, and keeps him out of society. However, despite how much we've been talking about how Avi is a piece of shit, because he is, I want everyone to look at these messages and see that this was a mutually toxic relationship. And you might hear that and wonder like, wait, how? Wasn't Nezzie the one being lied to? To which I say to read these messages as though Avi was telling the truth, which is what Nezzie believed at the time. Even with the whole thing being that Avi was apparently going to keep Nezzie in check on Twitter, if the issue is that you can't control yourself, then you need to remove yourself from the situation entirely. And you don't get to put the responsibility of your own inability to control your actions on your partner, especially when those actions include saying inflammatory shit publicly at someone who you believe to be their abusive ex, followed by you berating them for not coming forward to your defense against the person who you believe abused them. That is incredibly unfair and disgusting. Now, of course, none of those claims were true because I wasn't abusive, but looking at these messages from Nezzie's perspective on what they believed to be the case at the time, this is abusive behavior from Nezzie as well. And it seemed to have worked because after I announced that I'd be making a video on Nezzie, Light, as previously mentioned, told Avi, to which Avi responded by trying to build a base of support for him to come forward. Avi was ready to try and hurt me again. And it's interesting, acknowledging that, to then look at how Avi described the two of us to Light, where he describes me as an act of harm and Nezzie as good to your boy, when I would never do what Nezzie has done here to my girlfriend. I would have never done this to Avi. I would have never done this to anyone. But because Avi victimized me as a child and wanted to make sure no one from the community would listen to me if I ever spoke up about what he did, he made me out to be abusive and horrible. I don't know how to describe this in a way that would get across how fucking sick it is that you would make up lies and spread narratives that I forced you into anything and didn't care about your consent, when you know that you were fucking around with me when I was underaged and couldn't give consent to you if I wanted to. And I don't know how to describe how fucking sick it is that you would compare the child you preyed on to alleged abusers and cozy up to real victims feeling very real pain from very sensitive and vulnerable parts of their lives with the fake story that you were a victim as well. When Avi and I broke up, I initially told him that we could stay friends, but that I needed a break from him because of how his actions had hurt me. But a few days later, I was able to channel my hurt and anger into a message to Avi detailing how he hurt me and how I didn't want to stay friends with him. And in that message, I wrote, "You really have hurt me in a way I can't articulate and given me a reason to make sure I never come back to you." And when I said that, I never thought that he would take it as a challenge, but honestly, I should have. This is what abusive people do. They do everything in their power to retaliate against and punish their victims who are able to break away from them. Liam and Avi have both done it, and unfortunately, I was their unlucky target. If you're wondering how either of these people had responded to the backlash before everything with Avi happened, TLDR, there hadn't been, nor was there a shot in hell that there would have ever been a sincere apology from them to me. Avi posted on Blue Sky the day after my video came out that everyone owes Heaton, the piece of shit I had just exposed for all the horrible shit she said and lies she told about me, an apology. Delusion is a hell of a drug. And Nezzie, also after running away to Blue Sky, had only made vague passes at me, particularly once in responding to a butchered version of a criticism I made against them in the most copium-fueled manner possible, so completely on brand. And then a thread repeating almost the exact same line of thinking they used when victim-shaming me. Awesome! After I announced that I'd be making a video on Nezzie, they posted on Blue Sky that they had heard and were going to have their therapist watch it, which... come on, you guys. They then went on to complain about my announcement and Akumu's video going over the FCK, preemptively downplaying their own actions and ending off by saying,
I'm an adult, and I have better things to do with my time than entertaining spiteful people who refuse to move on or grow up.
I think the best thing I could bring up in response to this is that during the time of my video on Heaton coming out, a friend of mine found an old tweet from Nezzie that reads as follows.
I am so tired of people getting mad at others because they had the audacity to ask for some form of accountability or to have any form of self-awareness. My apologies. Clearly, I'm the bad guy for pointing out how you treated me like garbage.
It all makes me think. How were you so much smarter back then? Well, it's because they weren't smarter. They just weren't in the hot seat. I just have to say, belittling and touting down others who you've hurt like they're beneath you is one of the most immature behaviors I can possibly think of. To quote something you said before all you posted was unintelligible, furious crash outs. My apologies. Clearly, I'm the bad guy for pointing out you treated me like garbage. Fuck you. If there's anyone here who refused to grow up, I'm sure any sensible person here would say that it was you. End of story. Seriously, this coming from the person who said, stay mad, he chose me. I hope that sentence haunts you both for a long time. I do want to say, in the call I had with Nezzie, they apologized for everything they had done in regards to the situation with Avi and victim shaming me and befriending Liam. I've thought a lot about whether or not I forgive Nezzie, and the honest answer is no, I don't. At least not yet. Maybe there will be a magical day in the future where I find it in me to forgive them, but I don't see that day on the horizon right now. And that's about all I wanted to talk about today. Kayden, Blaze, Nezzie, I know you're mostly concerned with making stuff on your platforms that you want to make and moving on from all the hurt you've caused, but in my opinion, what you should be focusing on is growing the fuck up. Seriously, get therapy, go outside, get a job, and fuck off. Being a content creator is just not in the cards for you as you are. Deal with it. Avi. Words fail to describe how pathetic I find you, and the revelations I've made about the things you said about me behind my back, as well as the things you talked to me about while I was a minor for years, leave me more repulsed and angry with you than I ever thought I could have been. I never thought that I would have dated someone who hated me so much, who was more comfortable colluding to sabotage me with the person who abused me for years when I was a kid, than simply apologizing to me for the things you said about that abuse. But why am I surprised? You were a man abusing me too, and I didn't see it because I was attracted to you. Because you made flirty comments at me when I was a child, and conditioned me to be comfortable with you detailing your fetish and sex life to me. I will take glee in the fact that everyone finally sees you for the filthy, griming, lying, backstabbing, low-life predator that you are. I'm in so much better hands now, and with someone who actually cares about me and who actually loves me, which is more than I can say for you. Remember when Avi referred to me as a lonely bitch who will never find happiness? I would like to point out that I have a girlfriend who I've been dating for many months now, who I'm going to see in June, where we will have very many mushy cutesy dates, and I have a ton of friends who are going to meet up with me on that trip as well. Meanwhile, booger fucker over here has no friends, no romantic partner, and no direction in life beyond his precarious future in medicine. Oh, and my girlfriend is a lot taller than you ever were. Goodbye, Avraham. I hate you. I hate all of you that I've covered in depth in this video, to be honest, but I especially fucking hate you, Avi. And I hope you're all learning that the subtweet shit, the tweet and delete shit, the spreading shit about me in private, it's not gonna fly with me. And I hope y'all realize that I have no shame in talking about the horrendous shit y'all have done and putting it on blast. Shit, make me fucking rich. Because one day, you stupid motherfuckers are gonna have to learn that fucking with me is a decision you do not want to make. I do want to say, though, that the difference in support I've received since I uploaded my video on Heaton has been crazy. Back in the day when I first got like excommunicated, I never would have had this much support from both creators and audience members. It's been extremely heartwarming seeing people defend me from this shit and point out when creators are obviously in the wrong. I know that not everyone agrees with absolutely everything I do or say, and I would never expect that, but the discourse surrounding me is so much healthier and more fair than it ever has been. I sincerely thank all of you that have contributed to that from the bottom of my heart. Unfortunately, this is not where things end, and I want everyone to keep their eyes peeled for the announcement I make on the 22nd Tuesday of this month. Beyond that, however, I'm really going to try and get back into making videos on my new channel while I work on all the stuff here as well, which actually debuted in December last year. That's where much of the more topic-focused commentaries and fun videos will be, instead of just the Freak Saga. I even have a vlog of when I went to Disney World at the beginning of this year before the country collapsed with some of my friends. So let me know if you're actually interested in that. It means the green little frogs. It was a very fun trip. Okay. Bye.